What if I told you that there is a hidden strategy that allows real estate investors to acquire real estate with zero money out of pocket, even if the seller is looking for a high down payment? And guys, no, it is not wholesaling. No, it is not some outdated trick. And no, you do not need a perfect credit score or even a high bank account to make it work. So in this video, guys, I am super excited because I'm going to tell you and actually break down step by step how investors are doing this with no money down, even again when that seller is looking for a high upfront down payment. So let's get into it. This method is known as the stack method. Now, if you're in the creative finance world, you're likely going to know this as what's called a Morby method. Again, if you're in that space, it'll probably make more sense on that end. But guys, people are using this right now. I mean, they're using it to acquire all types of properties. You've got single family, you've got RV parks, you name it. But the problem is a lot of people have never heard of this because traditional lenders or your real estate gurus, guys, they're just not teaching on it. So by the end of this video, guys, you're not only going to be understanding how this structure works, but you'll be able to use it yourself, even if you have never done a deal before. But before we get into it, I want you guys to think about this: is why is it that some investors always seem to have money for all their deals while others, I mean, they struggle to put down even a small down payment or a single down payment, no matter what the size? The thing is, most people, I mean, they hear about seller financing and they assume right away, okay, the only way this is going to work is if the seller is willing to take small payments over time. But that's not always the case, guys. I mean, people come up with these preconceived notions of what the seller actually needs before they even get to the negotiating table. That's a problem. But guys, I'm here to tell you, with this strategy, it changes everything. For starters, guys, you need to understand that this type of transaction, it is a two-leg transaction structure. And I'm going to get into that in a minute on what I actually mean by that. But like I was mentioning before, I mean, investors come into these situations where they have preconceived notions of what the seller actually needs. You need to let the seller talk and absorb what they need in their situation, because you can structure these any which way you want. It's all going to be dependent on your imagination and, again, the needs of the seller. This is what's really important, is to go after what is the needs, or what are the needs of the seller. They may, I mean, at the end of the day, they are warranted all their money in that deal. They're warranted to have that equity in the home that they've built up. And they may have a good reason to where they're trying to roll it over to another transaction. Maybe they have a personal expense, maybe it's a medical expense, or maybe it's just peace of mind, guys. And I'm gonna challenge you on the peace of mind part, because if they're saying I just need it because of peace of mind, guess what? They just don't trust you. You're not negotiating properly, because if it's just peace of mind, then they're just in their head going, I need security, and I don't feel secure with you. Instead of walking away from these type of deals, the stack method or Morby method, whichever one you would like to call it, this purchase, again, it comes in two transactions. So now we're going to get into what do I mean by that. So in a stack method, you're initially, as the buyer, you're going to come in with some type of investor type loan. Now, a lot of the cases, it's going to be called a DSCR loan, so a debt service coverage ratio loan. And then for the debt, they're going to require a down payment. So they're not going to fund the whole 100%. It's just like your traditional loans from that standpoint. And PML, what you can do is, to fund that down payment, you can bring in what's called a transactional private money lender. Now, that's what I do. I'm very familiar with this because I'm the one that I fund these types of deals. And we'll get into what that looks like. So again, you have your DSCR plus your transactional private money lender that is bringing in the down payment. That's your first leg. Now, on the second leg, you may be asking, okay, so I have to pay that. How is this no money down, Josh? Well, guess what? The seller, you can negotiate with the seller to where they carry back a portion of their equity, and they, in fact, are the ones that are going to pay out this transactional private money lender and that down payment, in essence. So again, how exactly does this work? We're going to first, so you understand, draw out what a traditional transaction looks like, and then we can contrast the two. So what does a traditionally as an investor, or just say you're a normal average buyer, standard buyer, you are traditionally in the real estate transaction, you are going to go out to some type of bank and you're going to get pre-qualified for a loan. So it's some type of institution, you're going to get pre-qualified for a loan. Well, with whatever institution you go to, they're going to require some type of down payment, whether it's a 20% down payment, 5%, what have you. There's so many different loans out there, guys. But you're going to come in this case with the down payment. You have that pre-qualification ready. You are now ready to go out and actually search for a home. So you finally find the home that you're looking for, and that home obviously has somebody that is the seller. There's someone that owns that home. Now, you're either working directly with the seller or you're going to be working with someone that's a third party, maybe a real estate agent is another common one. But really, ideally, in these types of transactions, and you'll see why in a minute, it's much easier if you can talk directly to the seller. But if you do have a real estate agent involved, make sure you are not cutting them out of the deal, because that is not right. That is not the way to operate. You will burn yourself in this business if you're going to be treating people like that. So if you have a real estate agent, make sure they're taken care of. But you go in here and you're going to negotiate on terms of what you're going to purchase this house for. Once you all come to an agreement, then you are going to have what's called a purchase and sale agreement. And that's going to dictate what are the terms that you guys agreed to. Then over here, it then goes to some type of title company, or depending on your state, it might be a real estate attorney, what have you. Most common thing is going to be a title company, the vast majority of the US. But in this title company, a lot of the stuff happens here. Now we'll break down some of the simple items, but typically, first off, you're going to have EMD that is submitted by the buyer. And EMD, so it's earnest money deposit. It is a good faith deposit showing that to this seller that, hey, I am serious about this purchase. I'm willing to put down money to validify this contract, just indicating that, hey, I'm serious about this. I'm going to put some initial good faith deposit down. So with that, you have that. And then typically there's an inspection period where you can actually check out the home, make sure everything's good to go. And in between here, obviously there's going to be a settlement statement coming from title on, okay, what are all the ancillary closing costs that you have to pay for? Who's paying for, again, the debits and credits between the buyer and the seller, who's paying for what, and the closing costs, inspections, appraisals, stuff like that. So that, and then you have your close of escrow. As you finish out the transaction, the deed actually transfers from the seller to the buyer in most cases. So again, this is all done typically at title. Super straightforward. Obviously, there's more to a transaction than this, but traditionally, this is what it looks like. Now, in a stack or Morby method, really the difference here is just going to be on one, the type of debt you're going to be getting up here, as well as this down payment. You're not bringing that to the table. So what it's actually going to look like in a more of a Morby method or stack method is, for this, you are going to go again with that transactional private money lender. So we'll put TPML, transactional private money lender. Then this institutional, you're an investor, so you're probably likely going to have to get an investor loan. So you're going to have that DSCR. So we'll put DSCR. You're getting that. So you have your institutional debt, and you have your transactional private money lender paying for your down payment. Now, what you do once you're qualified is you go and negotiate with the seller, like, hey, since you have this equity in the deal, are you willing to seller finance? Maybe they're not willing to seller finance the whole boat. Or maybe they're like, hey, I only have 60% equity, but I do need some money for a bill that's coming up or a medical bill that's coming up, but I'm willing to seller finance a portion of that equity. Well, in that situation, you come to an agreement and try to get it to where you are covering this full down payment. So that's the first leg. You get that agreement in place. The second leg is at the end of this deal, at close of escrow, there is a second leg of the transaction where you are creating another note. So this is going to be a seller carryback note where this is obligating you, the buyer, to pay back that equity that you're borrowing from the seller down in the form of payments. And you can negotiate what that looks like, how quickly you pay it off, what does the payment look like, so on and so forth. But this is important because it's obligating you to pay that seller. But super cool structure. And again, as you can see, they're paying off this transactional private money lender. So you're getting a home with zero money out of your pocket if you structure it right. Now, one of the things when I was first looking at these transactions or getting into them, I was thinking, you might be thinking the same thing. It's like, okay, since the seller is paying for this down payment, why do we even need this transactional private money lender? Well, that's a good question. But the thing is, with these DSCR lenders or these institutional lenders, they want you as the buyer to have some skin in the game. So they want you to bring money to the table. So before they'll allow this to happen, they want to see that you have skin in the game. So that's why if you don't have the money to do it, excuse me, if you don't have the money to do it, you're pulling out that transactional private money lender to help pay for that. Now, the way we operate, again, I'm a transactional private money lender, and these types of deals, we make sure that all parties to the transactions are fully aware of what's going on. We have a list of our own lenders if your lender's not willing to do it. And we make sure that, hey, this is our role in the transaction. This is how we're going to conduct it. How do you need this transaction to be funded as far as like sourcing requirements? So that's how that works. But that's the main reason why you still need that transactional private money lender. There are very rare cases or scenarios where the main lender will also cover this portion as well, because they know how this structure works and that this seller's equity is going to come back and pay it off. So that is, again, it's pretty rare, and that's the reason why there are transactional private money lenders. Now with that, that's all fine and dandy. Obviously, you've got a nice little picture of what's actually going on, but let's get a real world example, guys. What does this look like really? So I've got some numbers for you on a transaction that I'm actually working through currently, and where I am, again, the transactional private money lender. And as far as purchase price, the piece of real estate, it's actually a quadplex. This one is 640K purchase price. And what we have here is, so the buyer, they got a DSCR loan for 75% loan to value, so LTV. So it's 75% of what the purchase price is that they're willing to fund. So that is 480. And then we're coming in and we're funding 185,000. And again, these numbers are a little rounded, obviously, to make it easier, but these are awfully close to where it's actually at. But I did round them off, so it's a little easier to computate for y'all. But again, you're maybe looking at this like, hey, Kate, this isn't exactly 25% of the purchase price for that down payment. Well, the reason being is we are not only funding the down payment, we're actually funding, because this DSCR lender requires reserves to be in there, we are funding that as well as paying for the closing costs that the buyer is responsible for. So that's why that is that. And what you see here is this is actually 665K. I think that's right, 665K. So that is what's being brought to the table from the buyer. Now in this case, in the seller, what do they still have on the property? So they actually don't own it completely outright. They have a remaining loan on it is for 435K. And what this looks like is at the close of escrow, this seller is getting their 640K purchase price. So you've got 640K for their purchase price. Then they subtract, you've got to pay off that 435K underlying loan that they still have on the property. That brings us to 205, so 205K. And then with this, because of the agreement for this structure, this seller is actually carrying back the portion to pay off us in the deal, so the transactional private money lender, this plus our fees. So that brings it down to, so put TL for transactional lender. That means they got roughly around 20K still remaining. So 20K goes to the seller at closing. This comes in as a second position note that the buyer is responsible for paying off. Now, this structure actually was slightly different. We're still in the process of it right now. It's not fully funded yet. And this one's a little nuanced. It's not your exact Morby method deal, and I'll get into it. I wanted to show this so you can see kind of the mechanics of it. But what's actually happening in this situation is right now the seller and the buyer, they are becoming partners. So they're not actually, the main difference here is the seller's not creating this note. The way it's done is they are becoming partners. And this one, to give you a backstory, the seller is actually a fix and flipper. So they purchased the property, rehabbed it, and their plan was to refinance out and hold it. Well, it ended up being better, or the numbers worked out better, to where this buyer is actually coming in, getting the institutional loan up here, and it's going to be more profitable that way. And they're partnering so they can keep the deal because it's a nice property, quadplex. I think they're going for a co-living exit strategy. Really cool. It's going to work out really well for them. But again, they're going into a partnership, and the way they structured their partnership is him as the seller. He's not going to create this secondary note. It's just going to be now they own this home within an LLC where they've got their whole operating agreement, how that looks, what the splits are, so on and so forth. So it's kind of a method of a Morby method, or a stack method. But the thing is, the reason why I call this a stack method is it's stacking. So you've got your DSCR, stack on top of that your transactional private money loan, stack on that your seller carryback loan. This situation, you're just taking that top stack off. So tomato, tomato, but it's not your traditional Morby method, but as you could see in this example, now you have an idea. But guys, this is awesome. And what's actually happening here is this buyer's coming to the table to where they've got zero money in this deal. And then not only that, they actually got a partnership structure out of it so they could actually gain some even more favorable terms. Now to close this out, guys, if you've been struggling to figure out how to break into the real estate game because of maybe a lack of money, I hope now that you see that most investors, they don't fail because of lack of money. They fail because they are not structuring these deals in the proper manner. Now, like one of my mentors says, while most investors are playing checkers, the top players in this game, they're playing chess. So guys, if you want to start leveraging this strategy, but you need help structuring it or maybe funding the deal, again, we can help you out with that. Click the link in the description below and we'll help walk you through the process. If you are looking for funding, we also do have a checklist in there that will, if you're going to these type of lenders, it's going to be a step-by-step checklist of what you actually need to make sure that you get funded in a timely manner. What do you need to bring to these lenders so you're ready to go and you're not wasting any time getting through approvals, stuff like that. Again, our approval is very streamlined, but if you bring all the required stuff up front, it does help with the transaction. So with that, take a look at that in the comments, and I will see you on the next one, guys.